um, and I've enjoyed them very much. So hopefully I can measure up. I'm going to read about, I don't know, 6 or 7 poems, maybe. Oh, I'm supposed to say something about myself. My name is Brian Brodeur. I'm a poet. I'm the author of 4 collections of poetry. Most recently, I'll just hold up the ones that I have here in case anyone is interested in buying copies. Most recently, some problems with autobiography won the New Criterion Prize in 2022 and was published in 2023. I'll be reading a few poems from this book, and then before that, Every Hour is Late is from Measure Press, and I think I might be reading 1 or maybe 2 from this. This came out in 2019, and then also a couple of other books. And I also write literary criticism, mostly poetry criticism, and I'm working right now on what hopefully turns into a book-length manuscript about modern and contemporary American narrative poetry. And so I think I have maybe 2 or 3 chapters left, and so hopefully I can find a publisher for that in the not too distant future. I have to write a book proposal first. So anyway, that's me. I teach at Indiana University East, which is a regional campus in the Indiana University system, and I live with my my lovely wife and beautiful daughter in East Central Indiana in the Whitewater River Valley. And yeah, I think that's probably enough about me. Thanks again for being here, and I will just proceed to read some poems. I thought I would start with, I like to start readings with a poem not my own, which I think is a great tradition, which I know that a couple of folks in this room participate in. Ryan Wilson is here, and I know he does this all the time. But this is a little strange, sort of a strange way to do that. I'm going to read a poem by Rilke, but it's my translation. So so it's a little sort of like backhanded version of starting with someone else's poem. I say translation, but really it's more of a Lowellian imitation. It's definitely not a faithful translation. This is a lesser, I mean, like, it's still a pretty well-known Rilke poem, but not as well known as some of his other short lyric poems. And hopefully those of you who know Rilke's work will recognize it. So yeah, I'll read it. Oh, just by way of like explanation about how much this is an imitation and how little of an actual translation this is, I'll just say that I kind of started off with, it's basically a poem in free verse, but it rhymes. And so I started off just doing like a very, 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 very rough literal translation. And then I turned that into a kind of sonnet and heroic couplets. And then I split that up, revised that a lot, and then split that up and relineated it so that it looks more like the way that Rilke presents the poem on the page. So, okay, I'll just read the poem. It doesn't have a title. I also hope, since this is the Thomist reading series, I think hopefully this is a good way to start, appropriate way to start. God speaks, but only once before we're made, then walks with us in silence through the shade. Forgotten when we first begin to be, his words to each of us impart this plea. You who throb with light, who I will send to follow every longing to its end, submerge yourself in life, guzzle the air, make me the gown of tattered rags you wear. Let the world happen to you, terror and beauty. Though you won't understand all that you'll see, flare like a match as long as you can, and know I dwell within its shadow and its glow. Approaching life, that spit of jagged land, don't let yourself be lost. Give me your hand. Okay. So next, Mary very kindly mentioned this poem. Basically at the very beginning of she and I and Chris being here. So I thought I would read this poem. It's really new, and I've never read it out loud to folks before. So I'll just try it out on you all if you don't mind. The poem is indebted to Frost, and those of you who know Frost well or even marginally well will probably understand the reference, which happens in the in the title. So I won't belabor an explanation. Let me see, what else do I need to say about this? I grew up. My dad was a builder, and among other things too, and ended his career, checkered career, as a building inspector. So I grew up around a lot of sawdust, and so yeah. So I'll just read this poem. Not versed in country things, replacing slate with bitumen, crumbling shiplap with new tongue and groove, we sweat the same as those other men who raised this crooked barn, and who, we'd like to think, would still approve. Like elders speaking in low tones to kids who ask about the recent dead, the ancient headers creak hoarse groans. In wind, the rafters strain as thunder grumbles closer overhead. We marvel at the wonky wall wedged into the hill so horses, goats, or cows could drift from pasture back to stall without the farmer's prod. Or we assume, shrugging at flails and plows. Planks termites haven't gnawed to sand retain old hammer dents and kerfs from saws. Who knows what those who toiled by hand would make of or make with our front end loaders and our zoning laws. As if anticipating us, they improvised the hipless gambrel slant and rigged the struts for each bowed truss, so steep it shouldn't stand. We've tried to realign them, but we can't. We yank square iron nails from boards and trade farm implements for farm decor, clearing eaves of nesting birds to patch roof gaps in rain. Where no doors hung for years, we hang a door. Chris said it was okay to bring wine, so I brought wine. All right, I'll read maybe a couple of things, or maybe one thing, and then I'll kind of switch back from these two books, maybe from here on out in the reading. Read this poem if I can find it. Let's see. Okay. I recently did had the pleasure of doing a workshop, a writing workshop on brief lyric poems at the Frost Farm last month, and Zena was there, and maybe a couple of other people in the room were there, and had a great time talking about. Oh, you know what? Let me X out of my email so it doesn't beep at me. Sorry about that. And yeah, had a great time talking about lyric poems, brief lyric poems. So here, brief lyric poems in meter and rhyme. And so here is a brief lyric poem in meter and rhyme, but it's in couplets. It's in heroic couplets, and but all of the rhymes are slant. And so so these particular slant rhymes, most of them are, as I think of it, pretty strict slant rhymes, mostly consonant slant rhymes, and so you can't hear them, or maybe you can. But anyway, so again and grain, for example, where the spelling is very close and you have all the same letters, but they don't exactly sound like rhymes. All right, I'll just shut up and read the poem. Okay, this is dedicated to my wife, Kylie. Midlife. What is this wanting now to know which one will be the first? Who will leave whom alone? I scoop and spill a cup of flour again, like chalk dust on the laminate's false grain. White as a tulle gown, white as smashed milk glass. A gated road the town won't plow unless it's paid. Ashes on white piano keys. Smoke streaming from a cigarette's white kiss. Outside, our neighbor forks another bale, so clean and pale it seems impossible. On bare fields luffed like sails, the hay still dry, the flock fat with the farmer's husbandry. I'll read another one of those slant rhyme couplet poems. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek poem. What else do I have to say about it? I don't know. It's sort of one of those it's one of those COVID poems that never mentions COVID, but it's certainly in the back it's certainly in the background. So I guess actually that poem I just read was as well. Self-portrait 2085. He doesn't look so good. Meat and marrow gone, buttons of his frayed shirt shedding like coins of bone, in payment for such cramped real estate, its lease with no option to buy, his mostly vacant sleeves fallen open in an attitude of, what now? Not much from this cutaway view of nothing new. Dust is at home anywhere, but above, the hum of crickets chittering summer's requiem pauses out of respect for a woman who kneels by mossy names. An automated bell knells its know-it-all refrain. What now? Well, who can say? Not him, effaced by the grave's false clemency, his jaw still hinged and gaping, not as if about to speak, but waiting as ore waits for the pickaxe's spark. So here's a little bit of an older poem from Every Hour's Late. this this I'm going to read a couple of kind of political poems, which I hope they're not annoying in your face political poems. I don't think they are, but hopefully they aren't. Okay, this one. What do I have to say about this one? This was this was written around, let's say, when was this? Maybe 2015, 2016, or that's when it was first drafted. And you would drive where I live, in Indiana and Ohio. I live basically on the Ohio border, eastern central Indiana. And so you'd see all these handmade signs that sometimes had just really ugly slogans on them. So this one came out of that experience and just the experience of that time, and which we sort of find ourselves in still. Babel. The creek we've called our creek since I remember. Gutters lower now than I've seen it in years. A new timbre to its voice, as if the slough it feeds below the gorges, blighted trees, bore more than sediment through the open throat of the culvert downstream. Gurgling descent in runnel slicks, this spill achieves its full articulation as rising steam. The surface stipples, spattering, unclean, and trickles its litany, though what it signifies I can't quite glean. Its do's and don'ts spurting tinny sprinkles that sound more like grievances. As whirls of algae roil, commingling with spore drift, the whole backwash taints and tints with oil. Each braided wavelet choruses in one long sigh, a tinkled prattle plash. Or is it spitting praise, an affirmation of froth and runoff silt? It dribbles over plates of slaty stone, so flood eroded they chip and split into the current. The cattails stiff as matches, the mud toothed with chert. Lodged there, a whitetail skull, a spectator to this burble and blurt, bleaches, watching. Silver twitches in the creek's descent, where stunted walleyes stir. You know, since Ryan is here, and by way of a thank you, I'll read this poem, which is along those lines. Another sort of political poem, but I think this one is maybe, I don't know, not as in your face as that one. But anyway, I call out Ryan here and embarrass him because he published this poem in Literary Matters while he was still editor there. Editor, he wasn't really an editor; he was more like a dynamo. Or a miracle. I don't know. You know? This is a sonnet. Field. The first crop sprouts this spring, too thin to bale. So rollers crimp and crack open each stalk to make the gravelly sod more arable. That's how it's done. Two neighbors stop to talk above the hum of haybines, shouting news as swallows skim flies rising from the duff. The men say what they know the other knows. No bottom to it, not hardy enough. Flies hatch, birds feed, the neighbors guesstimate a stakeless boundary line where their plots touch, and no one mentions map or plat. That's it. Last year's winter kill, today's bank rate. When one man's tractor bucks, he kicks the clutch. The engine judders, but doesn't quit. Not yet. Let's see. How are we doing with time? Guess we're okay. Let's see. I will switch now maybe to an elegy. Do I need to say anything about this? Excuse me. This one takes place in South Yarmouth in Massachusetts. I think that's all the Bass River. I think where it goes into the sea. I think that's all you need to know. Also, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. That's good to know too. I was just talking about that poem with a student the other day who had never read it, and which is always a pleasure to introduce, Keats or I don't know any of these to a student. And and I got hung up on the fact that, you know, I've talked to several poet friends, and none of whom are in this room, and they all seem to forget that, you know, this is those lines they belong to the urn. Of course, they still belong to Keats. Obviously, wrote them, but you know, but it's the urn who's speaking them to Keats, and so yeah, those yeah. Anyway, so that was a fun teaching moment. Okay. On mistaking a stranger for a dead friend, where dozens of egrets feast on their own reflection, late streaks of sun strike a surfcaster's face. As he ties a jig lore, I squint into the glare. We'd fish this marsh as kids. For perch, we called kiver. A gang of us upriver, stomping swamp orchids along a tidal island of storm-washed sand. In mud boots, I'd hike ahead to scout a decent spot on the crook of a silty spit. Stumbling from a trailhead, my friend, always last, would swear he hadn't been lost. I woke once to his voice, his boy's voice, calling still. I leaned against the sill, the window glazed with ice, dripping condensation, and shut my eyes to listen. Now, two egrets close the kinked parentheses of their necks, a damp breeze sticking to my clothes. Low tide's sulfur reek fouls the estuary. My friend's father, I learned, found him in his apartment. The father who'd only meant to stop by on an errand, folded the typed note and tried to untie the knot. Shouldn't egret share a root with regret? Seam with seam? Swells at tide line gleam, frothing algae rot. Though it urges hush, the surf will not keep quiet itself. One stalking egret weaves through planks of an old pier. Then a juvenile pair wades into grinding waves that a last piling greets. The beach crowds with regrets. I'll end by just reading two brief lyrics, and these are both daughter poems. My daughter Anna is 11, going on 27, and and so both of these poems are about her when she was much littler. And this first one is a fall poem. We're not quite there yet in terms of what this scene depicts, but soon enough. Let's see, what else do I have to say? This is the shortest one that I'll read. Open burning. As evening clouds bruise indigo, our daughter asks us why the leaves don't stay. We say they go to make room for more sky. She shrugs, then turns and stomps to dust, heap leaves she gallops through. Tossing armfuls up at us, she screams, "I'll bury you." I always think of that poem as a father's prayer in a way. um, with the hymnal stanza to match. So thanks again to Chris Honey for having me here, and thank you all for being here. It's been a pleasure, and I will just read one more poem, and this is another sonnet. So the title is Primer, which most people say as primer. So that's how it's meant, not like primer, the paint that you slop on the wall before you like actually paint the color that you want to paint it. So but I grew up in Massachusetts, so we say primer. That's how we say it. So so we don't say primer. But anyway, but for the rest of you all, it's primer. Primer. Too many devices. Sorry if you heard that my phone beep. Okay. Primer. We'd hoped it would last longer. The last year, she let us hold her sleepy in our arms, hoist her on our shoulders to swat the air, conducting some mute fugue by Bach or Brahms. Familiar tune, this plaint, too soon, too soon. This antique ache we've struggled to oppose, to want the morning back in afternoon, and wish for evening as the late light goes. Though she still tells us both to tickle her, our knees creak and our swollen ankles pop when we tackle her, squeezing her hard to hear the squeals that stab our eardrums. Stop, don't stop. On the drive to school, we take the back roads slow. Soon, this will all have happened long ago. Thank you all.